All right. Are our panelists ready? We are going to have a panel discussion with the theme, translation and interpreting from and into previously marginalized South African languages. Each speaker will have a maximum of 10 minutes. So we urge the speakers to try their level best. I know it's very difficult to keep to time, but let's try our level best, all speakers on the panel, to keep to the 10 minutes. The chairperson of this discussion is Prof. Alice Liu, and our panelists is Mr. Dennis Mhlanga, Ms. Hifa Chikile, Ms. Sibongile Koza, Mr. Asanda Mzizi. I see two ladies here on the panel. Do we have others online or everyone is here?
No, they're all here.
Oh, they're still outside. Hey, that break. Hey, that break. Yes, more shall I 5 minutes, yeah? Waiting for one more. Yes. Because the panel is of 4 people.
Now, we're ready.
Now everyone is here. Yes, okay. Prof. Lee?
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me. So our last panelist is joining us now. We're running out of time, so I'll try and keep this as short as I can. Let me just see, so 12:25, yeah. Very good. I just wanted to make a few cursory remarks on the department. Of course, we're very happy to be here today with DSAC and Pansalb, celebrating International Translators Day. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here and to see you all here. Well, our department is a new and a young department, as you can see. Dennis, next to me, is one of our permanent members of staff, and also Trelimpilo Dladla, whom you saw in the first panel. So we're very excited to sort of restructure the department and to help contribute to the linguistic landscape of South Africa. Just 2 years ago, we only had 30 students. This year, we have almost 70. 2 years ago, we had one PhD, and now we have 6, and there are a few more who are in the process of being admitted. So we are growing, and it's exciting. And again, I'm very happy to be here and to have 4 of these PhD candidates here next to me today. Today is crème de la crème, our best researchers, our most senior researchers here next to us. And I'm very excited, again. So without further ado, we should start. As you can see, we're going to be talking about translation and interpreting from and into previously marginalized South African languages. All these wonderful colleagues here are doing research in this very urgent area. We're going to start with Sibongile Koza. Sibongile is working on borrowed words and eponyms in medical translation into Siswati. The floor is yours, Sibongile.
Good. Is it afternoon? Yes. I would just like to say all protocol observed. I recognize all of you according to your seniority. And my presentation for today is titled Specialized Translation Competence. The debate earlier on, before we took the 5-minute break, was, can you wake up in the morning and decide to be a translator? In my view, you can't. Reason being, when it comes to specialized translation, people's lives are at stake. An error in medical translation can have devastating consequences, including death. The discussion today will be based on medical translator sub-competencies, based on the PACTE model of translator sub-competencies. And I will also attempt to map medical translation competence based on Kawacha's model, which is mapped on the PACTE sub-competence. I will first introduce my topic and then define what PACTE is, and then go through the 6 sub-competences, and then conclude my presentation. PACTE stands for the process of acquisition of translation competence and evaluation. This is a group of scholars devoted to researching the concept of translation competence empirically. In PACTE's view, translation is a communicative activity. Translation is purpose-driven. Translation requires one to have expert knowledge, which means you must go to school, get training in translation, and translation entails problem solving and decision making. The first sub-competence, according to PACTE, is bilingual sub-competence. We all know that for you to be a translator, you must be competent in 2 languages. In my case, Siswati and English. But then when it comes to specialized translation, it becomes a bit complicated, because you might be competent in English and Siswati. You also have to be competent in the language of medicine and the language of the recipient of the translations, the lay users and specialized people or medical experts, which means there are 4 languages involved. And it complicates things even further, because medical language, as we all know, is replete with Greek and Latin terms based on its history of origin. And the second sub-competence is extra-linguistic sub-competence. Udati Dantile spoke at length about it. Translation is mediating between 2 cultures. You don't just take a word in the source language and replace it with a word in the target language. You have to also be competent in both cultures, the culture of medicine and the culture of lay people, the culture of English and the culture of Emaswati if you are translating into Siswati. Cultural competence is important because you must know what your target audience expects and accept. A text which is translated by somebody who is incompetent culturally so is very, very much embarrassing, as we have heard when the previous speakers were talking about Bible translation. If I were to give an example, say you are translating a document on awareness, cancer awareness, and the target audience is elderly male people in your culture. And in that document, there's the word testicular cancer or prostate cancer. How do we translate that in a manner that will make your text acceptable? I'm posing the question and I'm moving forward because I know that I won't be able to respect time if I continue. You have to know what translation is all about, and obviously you have to go to school for you to be able to get this knowledge. Translation is meaning-based. You are transporting meaning from the source into the target culture, not words. What sets you apart from ordinary people or linguists as a translator is your ability to transfer meaning. If the source language has a term like meningitis, it's not enough to just say meningitis, whereas the receiving culture does have a term, the term which is mhlatsingri. That's the meaning. You don't just say meningitis. The previous speaker spoke about decolonizing the text. We mustn't just go to transliterating and borrow from other cultures when we have our own terms in the receiving culture. That's how we make our translation acceptable. Strategic sub-competence. A translator is a creative person. You have to be strategic. You have to be able to spot problems and come up with ways to tackle them. Psychophysiological components. Dr. Dantile spoke at length about ethics, about honesty, knowing what you can and cannot do, your strengths and weaknesses. You cannot just grab any translation assignment just because you want to be paid 45 cents per word. You must tell your people, whoever commissions you to translate, that I cannot tackle legal translation. I cannot tackle medical translation. Remember, if you just take medical translation, you will kill people. We see now, I'm not sure if we are all aware that our patient information leaflets are now available in isiZulu on the website of Pharma Dynamics. And you can have a look there and see how brilliantly they have been translated. They were translated by somebody who knows that I dare not fault or commit any error because I don't want to kill people out there. If the information is take this medication before you take meals, you translate everything accurately and your translation has to be complete. There's a reason why a patient information leaflet has something like before, after meals, 15 minutes before you eat. You cannot just say, take this medication in the morning. Why leave the 30 minutes before? There's a reason why it's there. Your translation has to be complete. You have to translate in an ethical manner and also be aware of where your loyalty lies. Who do you pledge allegiance to when you translate? You are not translating for the source or the original recipient. You are translating for your target user. And whenever you translate, especially specialized translations, because they are there for people to make decisions based on your translation, your loyalty must always be aligned with your target recipients. It must empower them to make informed decisions. Imagine translating something inaccurately in a court of law and you end up putting someone in prison just because you translated inaccurately. So I thank you. That's the end of my
Thanks very much, Smongile. I'm sure everybody has comments and questions. I certainly do. But let's continue with the next presentation and then we'll have a nice discussion in the end. Our next panelist is Asanda Mzizi. He is writing or researching on the presence or lack thereof of isiZulu in the South African financial market. Asanda, the floor is yours.
Yeah, My height is something else. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Good afternoon. Let me see. There's one change in between my slides, so I'm not sure if this one is still consistent with my slide that I have. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think I will continue here, and then when they are not aligning, I will tell you. Thank you, Alice, for the introduction. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for coming, and this is my presentation. Like Alice said, I am working in African languages in the global economy of knowledge, the role of isiZulu, and the financial sector. Well, let me proceed. This will be my contents, so from introduction, and then we'll proceed like that to the research topic, language policy framework, and so forth. Okay. Well, my introduction in this study, it is the theme of today, the current realities of South Africa. My research topic for today that I've selected, oh, it doesn't move, sorry. Pardon me. Okay, yes,
Yeah.
please, yeah. Sorry for that, yeah. Okay, yeah, number 2. Thank you. I've told you about the broad research topic for my project, and then the one that I've selected for today, it is the intersectionality or intersection between the South African language policy framework, translation as a profession, and the South African financial sector. Okay. Language policy. Yes, thank you. Language policy framework in South Africa, we know that it is a set of rules that is governing the use of official languages. So South Africa, as we're all aware, that it is a multilingual society or a multilingual country. Okay, yes, the next one. Thank you, Alice. The regulatory framework of South Africa, when we attended the function or the event in Sandton, we heard that the United Nations, they've declared that the year 2022 to year 2032 as an indigenous languages era, right? So the language policy for South African official languages is based on these following constitutional and legislative provisions. Even though I will not dwell much on them, let me go to the first one, which is the Constitution of South Africa, Republic of South Africa, Section 6, which afforded all the official languages with the status of being used as official languages. And then you see the others, but I will not dwell much into them because my time is against me. Please proceed, Alice. All right. Okay. Multilingual language policies in South Africa. So to a large extent, we know that the financial sector in South Africa is very much monolingual. So Dr. Dante, Mr. Dante today, he said that the economy in South Africa is controlled by indigenous languages. I mean, it's run by indigenous languages, but it is controlled by English. Well, the technical financial markets in South Africa, it is still to this day run by English. I will show you what I mean by that as the presentation continues. All right. So this means that the financial sector in South Africa, it contains complex terminology, complex acronyms, and complex legislatives that a man in the streets will not easily understand for everyday use, right? Okay. Let me proceed to that. So this means that the South African languages, they need models that are developed in African languages so that we can create an appetite for business in order to make our languages to be used in these particular financial institutions or whatever. Okay, so I have, okay, please continue there, Alice. Okay. In terms of the statistics that was released by Stats SA in 2022, it says that, so these percentages that we are seeing here, those are the numbers of people who are speakers of these African indigenous languages. So if we talk about protecting and promoting our African languages, we mean that we are protecting and we are promoting the people that are speaking these languages, people like me and you, all right? Let's continue, at least 5 minutes, note that. So, okay, the heart of the economy.
Further.
Yes, thank you. So when we come to the heart of the economy, then move to the back one, Alice, thank you. Back.
Back or forward?
Back. Again. Yeah, so that was the change that I made between my slides,
Okay.
yes. So the South African financial sector, it has all these language policies, language practice, language discourse, language ideologies. So though the policies are in the South African financial sector are pro-African languages, however, the language practice is really not there. Therefore, the language discourse and language ideologies should be about sustainable development of all indigenous languages. And so this means that we have to invest more in our African languages and make sure that they are well capacitated and they are well resourced in order for them to take up space in technical financial sector or in the technical financial market of South Africa. Let's proceed.
One more?
Yes, one more. Okay. So these are the financial institutions that are in SA and that I have selected as case studies for my research project. So up there we have the FSCA, the SRP, the SRPS, the JSE, and NS3. So these are the financial regulators. And then below number 2, we have the top 6 banks, and then there's one bank in eThekwini, which is Itala Bank, that I will be working with, all right?
Forward?
Yes, please. The translator in the financial sector, what is imperative about the translator in the financial sector? So, yes, thank you. The translator in the financial sector, so we really need collaboration between linguists, terminologists, computer scientists, bodies, which is our agencies like Pansalb, Department of Arts and Culture, and many more stakeholders that can contribute into making South African languages take space in technical spheres or in technical sectors like the South African financial sector. So Mr. Dante spoke about the language and economy, or the economies of language. It is really crucial for African languages, especially in South Africa, that South African languages, they take up space in technical and complex sectors like the financial sector that I will be looking into as going forward with my present, or with my dissertation. I'm saying dissertation, with my thesis. Thank you. Okay. And then next one, I have 2 minutes. Okay. So these are the research questions, but I will not dwell much into them. I have my research questions and objectives. So main research question, research sub-questions. Continue there, Alice. Yes. Yes, thank you. Next slide, please, again. Thank you. So I have my research methodology that I will not also dwell much into because I'm looking into at the time that I have. Roughly, this is what I will be going through and using my mixed method, sequential explanatory design for my research going forward. And then my conclusion. If we are to stop to being enemies in our own languages, our languages will be what we envisage them to be. So this means that we mustn't always promote or advocate for other languages. Rather, we must advocate and promote our languages in order to use them in every day or wherever that we want to use them, especially in technical sectors like the financial sector, in mining, in health, and and all the sectors that we deem our languages need to take part, and we deem that our languages need to play a crucial role for our people, and they need to play a crucial role for South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ngambonga Asanda. We're going to proceed with our next presenter, and that is Heather Chikele. Heather is researching into court interpreting, specifically rape cases, and all the linguistic and cultural challenges in that particular context. So Heather, the floor is yours, either there or here, as you like it.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Heather Mekateko Chikele. Be greeted. I just want to take an opportunity to appreciate my lectures, my mentors, and my dad, who is in the gallery. I think it's safe to say all protocol observed. Here is my topic: challenges faced by court interpreters on rape cases, euphemism versus direct talk. Now, my subtopic is the impact of euphemism on court interpreting. Here is my content layout: introduction, aims, problem, significance of the study, literature review, theoretical framework, methodology, and the conclusion. I will not leave you hanging, obviously. The introduction: the purpose of the study, the impact of euphemism on court interpreting. The study investigates the challenges court interpreters face, particularly when interpreting sensitive and complex cases, evidence on rape cases. These challenges vary depending on the communicative partners, such as minors versus adults, where language choice and sensitivity differ significantly. Additionally, this study will examine how an interpreter gender might influence the performance in rape cases through comparative analysis. Another focus on the regional context, exploring the difference between township, urban areas as words and expression may hold varied meanings depending on location. Drawing from the perspective of Peluka in 2018, it is crucial that an interpreters communicate with sensitivity to avoid distorting judiciary's messages. Similarly, Paget and Tisselis in 2019 emphasized that interpreters must navigate between euphemism and direct language. This study will analyze the implications of these language choices, especially when interpreting for people of various age, gender, and cultural background. At this early stage of my research, I aim to explore how euphemism and direct language affect interpretation process in rape cases. This study will outline the challenges faced by interpreters and recommend strategies to maintain the rights and dignity of all participants contributing to the unbiased and a fair decision making. Now, here's my aims. The study aims to improve interpreters' skill, promote judicial processes, and address the challenges they face in cultural sensitive situation, ultimately recommending practices to ensure unbiased decision. The problem: balancing euphemism and direct language. Court interpreters struggle to find the right balance between using euphemism and direct language in such trials, which impact clarity and accuracy of communication. Cultural and linguistic challenges. Interpreters face difficulties due to cultural difference in language use, where certain expression may not translate effectively or may be misunderstood across cultures. Implications of justice: the use of euphemism and the challenges it presents can affect interpreters' emotional involvement, impartiality, and ultimately the ability to ensure a fair and a just legal outcome. the significance of the study. This study is significant because it addresses the crucial gap in the field of court interpretation, particularly in handling sensitive cases such as rape, by investigating the impact of euphemism, culture, and linguistic challenges, and their implications of justice. The study will provide a new knowledge that can be used to improve interpreting training, to ensure better legal outcomes and influence policy reforms. The findings will contribute to the development of best practices in legal interpreting, making a meaningful impact on both the field of legal interpreting and the justice system as a whole. Something went wrong. Can you please give me a sec? Technology, he said that it will kill us. I was here, right? The next slide. Okay. The research is significant because I think I said this, I read this already. The literature review. Euphemism might unintentionally contribute to the victim blaming by downplaying brutality and the suffering connected to rape. For instance, replacing sexual assault with a less specific language like inappropriate behavior might reduce the seriousness of violation and cause misunderstanding over the nature of the crime. On the other hand, employing direct language may be overly explicit, which can make the one concerned feel uncomfortable or distressed. This was said by Terry in 2020. Now, according to studies, it's important to strike a balance between euphemism and directness to accurately represent the speaker's goal while also taking into account the cultural and the legal complexities of the situation. Interpreters have to modify how they interpret. Now, this was said by Haile in 2007. The theoretical framework. Now, this study will be underpinned by, it's a question mark because I'm still at the early stage of my research. I have not yet decided on the framework to use. Last year, I applied the interactant model of interpreting situation by Pocheka, 2005 and 2016. I am currently exploring the possibilities of using two theories, including one related to pedagogy. Since the study is still at its early stages, this decision will be finalized as the research progresses. I am running for time. The methodology. The study will employ a qualitative research approach to explore the complexities of court interpreting in the High Court of Johannesburg. This approach will allow also the in-depth of the understanding and the experience that court interpreters face when they interpret in serious cases such as rape. The research design, a case study design will be used to provide detailed insight in challenges interpreters face when interpreting sensitive cases. The sampling I'll use approximately 15 interpreters aged between 35 and 60 with at least 10 years experience. These interpreters have been chosen based on their extensive experience and knowledge in legal interpretation. Data collection, I'm speaking very fast, I know. Data collection, the primary data collection tool will include questionnaires administered through Google Forms, which will also allow interpreters to share their experience and perspective. Additionally, transcripts from previous finalized cases will be analyzed to also understand the complexities that interpreters face. Ethical consideration, the study will adhere to ethical guidelines, ensuring confidentiality, I always struggle to pronounce that word, and obtaining informed consent from all participants. Ethical clearance will be obtained from relevant university ethics committee. Now, the limitation, the study focused only on one group of interpreters, which are in Johannesburg High Court. And now, validity and reliability. To ensure that validity and data triangulation will be employed using multiple sources, a questionnaire and transcripts. I was still there. I'm still correct. At present, I'm still working on the details of these research components and will refine them as I further my study. Now, data analysis. A thematic analysis approach will be used to analyze data collected from both questionnaires and transcripts. This will involve identifying, analyzing, and report patterns or themes that emerges from the data. Now, finally, my conclusion. Court interpreters play a crucial role in ensuring effective communication during legal processing. This study will delve into the challenges faced by interpreters when balancing euphemistic language with direct talk, navigating cultural, linguistic, age, and gender differences. It further explores how these factors will affect witness testimonies, emotional involvement, and impartiality. The ultimate goal is to recommend strategies that will uphold the right and dignity of all participants, fostering conditions for unbiased and a fair decision making, considering how age and gender influence both interpretation and language usage. With that, I would like to bow out and say thank you.
Thanks so much, Heather. Sorry for interrupting you there with the slides. Anyway, we're going to continue then, without further ado, with our last panelist, and that will be Dennis Mhlanga here next to me. Sorry, Heather. Dennis is looking into medical assessments in different settings, for example, in court, in this radically multilingual country, right? What is the role of interpreters, translators in these medical assessments? Dennis, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dennis Mhlanga. You know, in my PhD journey, although it is at its beginning stages, I've experienced a lot of support. So I wouldn't be able really to mention all the support that I got and individuals who contributed to this PhD journey up to this far. I can only say all protocol observed. Well, today, I have extracted a certain chapter from my PhD, which speaks about the cross-cultural variables in neuropsychology assessment. So basically, the topic of my PhD is the role of the language practitioner during the psychometric or neuro assessment and forensic assessment. Now, I will be giving you a short introduction, of course, talking about the test batteries. I forgot to move here, sorry. Multitasking, all right, there we go. Now, test batteries, culture, Afrocentrism and Eurocentrism, bridging the cultural gap in mental psychometric assessment, and also, lastly, give you the conclusion. Now, when we talk about the, sorry, this thing is jumping, I think there's some skipping that is happening here. Yeah. Okay, but I think I think I can do both. Stay here. Okay. All right. It's just frozen now.
To go back to presentation mode, right?
Okay, it's fine. Yeah, I think it's okay. When we speak about neuropsychology tests, what are we talking about? This is a branch of psychology which has something to do with psychometry assessment, and it relies solely on the standardized test batteries that are used to find or identify any issues, if I may use that word, in one's brain. So in other words, they are trying to identify any brain function or dysfunction that an assessee might have. So what are they normally looking at? I won't be able to mention all these points that they normally, or things that they normally assess. They might look for the TBI, which is your traumatic brain injury, your depression, anxiety, memory disorder, pessimism, mental retardation, learning difficulties, and also some of the psychotic illness. Now, the test batteries that are currently used in South Africa, these test batteries are standardized, but they do not originate in South Africa. They originate in the United States, Britain, and Western Europe. So basically, they are adapted in Africa, to be used rather in Africa, and also in South Africa to be specific. Now, this leads us to culture. What it means is that because they do not originate here in South Africa, they do not cater for the cultural diversity that we have in our country. So this will also mean that we need to understand that in our culture, there are lots of the historical or contemporary influences that influence one's culture. If you can think of race, ethnicity, religion, gender, and so forth, these are some of the points that influence anyone's culture. People use culture in their daily life. In fact, when people are facing any problem, they will normally apply their cultural knowledge or this encyclopedic knowledge that they have with their culture in order to solve the problem. In other words, people, whenever they conceptualize any concept, they will apply their culture in order to understand what someone else is telling them. Okay. I want us, oh goodness, this thing. Okay. It is just skipping, I have no idea. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Let's speak about the African culture versus the Western culture. When we speak about the African culture, we're talking about the interdependent or holistic culture that has different elements into it. African culture basically doesn't exist in isolation. It has different components such as your connection to the environment, a strong relation between the families, your community, gods, the natural powers, ancestors, performing of rituals, and the consultation of the healers. This makes one to be in a position, so to speak, of an equilibrium. So in other words, when you think of South African culture, Africans think that they are disequilibrium when they do not conform to the points that I've spoken about. So in other words, they think if they don't conform to that, they are going to be exposed psychologically, physically, and in other means. In other words, they might be subjected to even other types of sickness. But what about the interdependent analytical, which is the Western culture? It normally doesn't do anything with other components. It exists in isolation. It has something to do with analyzing or the logic, which is the difference that is there in the African culture and the Western culture. In other words, the testing batteries that I spoke about are basically advocating for this analytical, which is independent instead of interdependent. But why are we talking about this? Okay, let me skip this in the interest of time. I want to jump quickly into Afrocentrism and Eurocentrism. When you speak about Afrocentrism, so basically it is a certain way in which one perceives the world. If you perceive the world through the tradition of Africa, you are perceived as someone who practices this Afrocentrism. Whereas when you perceive the world through the European perspective, you are perceived as someone who practices Eurocentrism. But why are we bringing this thing up? We are talking about culture that interferes with the testing batteries of the psychometric test that we spoke about. Now, Frantz Fanon speaks about on his book, black skin, white mask. Most of you know Frantz Fanon on his political activism, but in fact, he studied medicine and psychiatry. So he says on this book, in the psychology fraternity promotes the Eurocentrism within the African people. He felt that his inner being was alienated. In other words, he was not himself during the practice of psychometry. In other words, people are diagnosed through the Western understanding of the culture and ignoring what black people are. So in other words, this type of culture that is being now practiced in this psychometry, whether in forensic or in neuropsychology, it does not cater for African people. Now, why do we need this to be bridged? Oh, thank you, it's moving now. Bridging the cultural gap in mental or psychometric assessment. We need this to be bridged because currently our people are being diagnosed using the Western culture. What do I mean by that? You know, there are some types of illnesses that in Western culture are perceived as psychotic illnesses, but in African culture, they could be associated with rituals. Now, when somebody comes to a white psychometrist and tell them that, look, this is what I'm experiencing, they would normally associate that with maybe a psychotic issue. Whereas if the psychometrist was in understanding of the traditions and the cultural dynamics of Africans, they could have understood when they said, I'm not sick, I need to perform 1, 2, 3, and 4. By that, we are not saying they need to have full knowledge or believe to that, but they need to understand that cultural dynamics do exist between these two types of groups. Okay, thank you, Ernest, for the reminder. Right, let me conclude. Now, where does interpreters and translators come in all this? We need interpreters to bridge that gap. Why? Because currently we have people that were diagnosed as people who were unfit for a criminal trial because there was a misunderstanding culturally during the assessment from the assessee and the assessor. And also we have people that currently were diagnosed as those who are not mentally fit for some task, not because they are not mentally fit, it's because there was a cultural gap. I want to give you a simple example. They will test your general knowledge through some of the list of words. You need to explain what does that mean. For instance, they will take the word stethoscope and they will ask my mom, who never went to school, what is a stethoscope? And if she doesn't know that, they might perceive her as somebody who has some issues. And if you ask my mom, Tinhlolo, when you throw bones, she will definitely know that that is a diagnosis that is used by Africans to understand what is eating you, so to speak. So now, we need to understand such those testing batteries currently, since they are not existing in African culture, it means we need interpreters and translators to bridge that cultural gap. By so doing, we can produce results that are reliable without any better consequences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nyabonga, Nkomo. This is, like I said, obrigada. This is, like I said, it's exciting. I don't know. I think you share my excitement. I really want to see these theses ready and defended and published, hopefully, so that we can all learn about the results. So let's have another round of applause for our doctoral candidates. We're going to have a short Q&A session. I'd like to start with a question to all of them, and I'd ask you to be concise if you can, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes. And my question is the following. I wanted to come to South Africa because of this radical multilingualism, and I always wondered how it was actually managed here. And obviously translation and interpreting play a pivotal part in this sort of managing multilingualism. My question to you is, can translation become a tool for exclusion? Because sometimes often we take it for granted that translation means inclusion. But when the source language is invariably English, And when our translation strategies are almost always very foreignizing, that is, they lean very close to English, can translation become a tool for exclusion? This is my question to you, and we can maybe go in the order of the presentations if that's okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Of course, when we look at medical translation, for example, if we are translating a journal article and the target user is a medical specialist, I'm going to use the term Alzheimer's disease. You can throw it in there and say, for say Alzheimer. This specialist won't be excluded because they are trained, they know these terms. You can throw your nephritis and stuff. But then when the genre shifts, your journal article, remember, can become a summary for patients. There's no need to include C4C Alzheimer's there. Your first stop is, what is the term in the target culture? If it's not there, rather go the paraphrase route. Define it based on its symptoms, C4C ukhohlwa. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, for me, I feel it's a bit of both. Let me give an example. So usually I listen to Kaya FM from 6 p.m. and then I'll listen to 702, but it's not possible to listen at two radio stations at the same time. So I'll listen to Kaya FM, 702, and Metro FM. So from 6 p.m. they are doing financial news, right? They are doing updates. But when you switch to Ukozi FM, so at Ukozi FM, they are usually doing sports. So there, and let me go to news first. So when they are reporting news in English at Kaya FM and 702 and Metro FM, it will be the same news, and those news, they'll be translated into isiZulu. And then when you listen to Ukozi FM, same news, same reporting, even though the wording will be different. But when it comes to financial reporting or financial markets updates, whatever, it does not happen on Ukozi FM. And we have translators at SABC, but they are not, I'll say sometimes, maybe they are not utilizing them to that extent where we're going to get the same updates that we'll get at Kaya FM when they are doing financial news from Monday to Friday, and then of course FM they'll be doing sports from Monday to Friday. So I feel for me it's a bit of both. It's a tool for inclusion and it's a tool for exclusion. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. It can become, right, a tool for exclusion. Thank you.
I don't know if I'll be answering your question. We are in South Africa with 12 official languages where English stands out most. And what I have seen is that, okay, in court, when maybe a document is translated, there's interpreting and there's translation. When a document is translated, it is important to add the elements of what was said. Otherwise, it will be distorted. It won't be what is meant. That's I think one of the speakers said so. And you need to always put your thought in what you are doing. Add your culture, add your age appropriate, because I might say something that a 12-year-old might not understand. Like my topic, euphemism. If I state that to a 12-year-old, they'll ask themselves, what is it? So you need to, when you are translating, you need to make sure that you bridge that gap, the age gap, so that a 12-year-old can understand what I was trying to say when I say euphemism or euphemistic language. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, whether it is inclusive or not.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's the point, right? It can be both or either, really. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think in the context of what I was presenting, I will be discussing about the negative aspect of the exclusion when one translates from English to any indigenous language. You know, I was thinking of different test batteries that are currently used in the psychometric assessment and also even in the neuropsychological assessment, you know, you have lots and lots of words that do not have equivalence. Now, and as soon as you start to translate, you are defeating the purpose of the assessment, because if a word has to be used once to trigger something in one's brain, and it has to be a word, and you don't have an equivalent, you're now giving a descriptive translation. You are basically giving an answer to that person. Then the assessor wouldn't know if that person is really maybe facing some dysfunctionality in their brain or not, you know, or maybe they might think everything is fine because you gave them the answer. So I would say, in terms of the psychometric assessment, it would have been better if it was translated or we invented our own, you know, and after the invention, maybe it was in Zulu, because most of our languages are interlinked, you know. You can think of the cluster of your Yonguni and Sotho. We can work around that, you know, rather than trying to translate something from the European Britain perspective, which has no consideration of our cultural dynamics. So I think in that context, I would say translation in test batches is exclusive.
Thanks very much. I think that's a good takeaway for us from this panel, perhaps, that more has to be written originally in these previously marginalized languages. We cannot always have English as the source language for all the reasons mentioned here. Now, I'll ask the program manager to tell us if we have time to maybe take one or two questions from the audience. Is that okay? One. Who's going to ask the one question? We've got one here. Excellent. You can turn your mic on, and we look forward to your question.
I don't know. Afternoon. Is my mic on? I'm interested on the answer of your question. I'll put a context into it when you talk about how do you translate prostate cancer. I'll put an answer, like a proviso to it, that South Africa, especially the Eastern Cape, is facing the largest amounts of medical legal claims. So I think the last time in the Eastern Cape only was 1.3 billion. In the country, we are facing close to 3 billion, if it's not 4 billion, around these particular issues. Some of them are in public hospital because the medical doctors that come from Cuba cannot speak English. They are specialists, but cannot speak English, do not understand English. And I'm interested in that. Added into that is an issue of, one, decolonization, de-evangelization of our languages. Euphemism. How do we, who said that uklonipa, that euphemism is euphemism? Who said that? Why can't we say in Siklos amampondo akwate, because they say things as they are. This bottle is a bottle to them. It's not something like a bottle. So why are we having a concern with directness in terms of these particular processes? And how do we solve that? And to you, I like the diagnosis element. I'm thinking of two people who are in custody. I won't call them criminals. One who burned down parliament. The second one, the Thabo Bester. Then can you bring a traditional element in their situation? Ukutu Thabo Bester azangalungiswe. That's why he was not. There's no coach that was. Can you bring that into the picture?
Very interesting.
For time's sake, I'll stop it there.
I wonder if we don't have much time left, but maybe you want to come in. Smogile, Heather, is there anything you'd like to comment on? I think there was no direct question, but perhaps you have comments, and then Dennis, and we'll wrap up.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Can I proceed?
Hello.
There's somebody speaking.
It's Mr.
Madam
Dr.
Speaker.
Dr. Cleveland. Dr.
I just want to, I have a quick one, just to couple it with what the other speaker was saying, so that maybe it can be answered all together. Thank you. My question is directed to Mrs. Chikede. Direct language, it's the language that we use in our everyday life. Euphemism, it's there to beautify the language. It's something that we are taught when we are still young, until we grow. A 12-year-old understands euphemism. They understand when I say, famba pipita, noblayin, instead of famba runza. They understand that. So I wanted you to clarify me, how do you mean when you talk of unbiased decisions, coupling it with the use of euphemism? Are you saying the use of euphemism is wrong or is right? Or should we continue using direct language, calling private parts as they are in court? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Participant. He's our PhD, our postdoctoral fellow. That's why we're teasing each other.
Maybe to try and respond to Babu Dantile's question. Okay, firstly, I would say it depends on who my target user is. I wouldn't translate testicular cancer as umhlata wemasenze for an elderly target user. I would rather say umhlata wetikwa. You see how it's like, yeah, I wouldn't translate it like that. It depends on who. There are circumstances where I would have to go direct, and there are circumstances where I would have to use euphemism. But my issue is if your target user is not a specialist and you opt to go the transliteration route, to me, it's my view, rather leave the text untranslated, because we are not assisting anyone. Because in medical communication, we are assisting the user to make informed decisions. And once at that, there's a difference also between testicular cancer and prostate cancer. I know people think it's the same thing, but as a translation scholar, you research these things and you know testicular cancer has to do with emasens at the scrotum, and prostate cancer has to do with the glands that house the sperm. Thank you.
For time's sake, I'll merge the two questions and make them one. Did you hear what she said? Based on the target. You don't just abruptly speak. You check your target. There are words that I will not just speak because my father is here. It goes back to culture. It goes back to age. It goes back to the community as a whole. Xhosas, yes, they call a spade, but we don't do that in the Tsonga community. You heard him when he said that Famba Pipita instead of Famba Yorunza. We don't say things just rough like that, no. We add respect, just as the Zulu culture also adds that respect with it. We don't, you asked me a question if it's good or wrong. I don't know, is it right or wrong, the usage of euphemism? You check who you are talking to, your target. How do you relate with that person? Is it a professional conversation that you're having, or is it just myself and a friend that's speaking a gas and I can speak anyhow? But if I'm talking to my father, I cannot just say the words that she uttered. I can't say it right now because he's here. So it goes back to culture and respecting the targets that you are addressing. I hope I am clear.
Oh,
The problem is you're talking about the legal context.
will you mic, ma'am?
Legal context, things have to be specified clearly, because you might let a rapist go off by using euphemism, whereas if you specifically said exactly what this accused rapist is supposed to have done, and clearly and spelling it out, then the judge will and also talking our context that we're dealing with an English framework, we're dealing in a Eurocentric framework, and if you're going to be too euphemistic, you might be covering a whole lot of facts and reality that this poor victim of rape has faced.
I believe I was speaking too fast. I did utter that. I did mention that sometimes euphemism will downgrade or downplay what was actually said. I made an example of sexual assault and said inappropriate behavior. Those are two different things. You are downplaying it now. So it depends on the target that you are addressing. When you are speaking to the child, yes. When you are speaking to the child, say there's an intermediary, they don't just say a penis. They don't say that, but they explain what it is. So it depends on the target that you are addressing. It's not just anyone that you're talking to. But in court, as the child will say whatever the child said, but when I am interpreting, I must say it exactly as it is, without euphemisms or using euphemistic language. I believe I am clear.
Of course, it's not that euphemisms are good or bad, but if they are used, it's a question of navigating them in the interpreting, right? Thanks.
Tata Tantile, ndiyabulela ngombuzo wakho tata. I think there's two here that the two elements of assessment that we spoke about. The first one, it's your neuro and psychometric assessment. Those are normally used for the third-party claims, like the one you mentioned about medical malpractice. You know, if maybe there's anything that went wrong, maybe from the hospital, and they want to claim against the state, that's where they will go to the neuropsychologists, clinical psychologists to diagnose these people of the impacts of what they went through psychologically. So that is where the cultural dynamics comes in, to understand what they think and how are they feeling and how do they associate what they went through with their culture and tradition. Then you need somebody, so in other words, the process of diagnosing them, sometimes it's incorporated also with the therapy as well. So for these people to benefit through that process, you need somebody who understands labasuka khona and how they reason and how they understand what you are saying without having any cultural misunderstanding. But now, the other element, which is about the forensic assessment. Forensic assessment, it's completely different from these third-party assessment. Forensic assessment, it's basically being performed to identify if you are fit for trial or not. And it has nothing to do with what you have done, but it is something to do with the communication, how you communicate to the stakeholders, the prosecutor, the judge, and even the other lawyers or the other stakeholders that are involved in court. Let me quickly give you the example of Dimitri Tafendas, who assassinated Verwoerd in 1966 in Parliament. Because of the extent of the gravity of his wrongdoing, when they went to the trial, he said there was a big worm that told him that he must stab Verwoerd. So that type of reasoning sent him to psychiatrists, not psychologists. No, psychiatrists, that's when they identified that there is an issue with this man. He was unfit for trial, but however, that doesn't mean you are spared from a sentence. You will get a sentence, but which is equivalent or which is fit for the type of mental illness that you are going through. So so best there's a treatment for him, and also Uzandile Mafe, December Mafe, there's a treatment for him. So it's not that because you banned Parliament, therefore you're unfit for trial. No, you need to go through this psychiatric assessment, which is part of the forensic assessment, to make the court aware if you are fit or not for the trial. But however, whether you are unfit or fit doesn't mean you will be treated differently. But the sentencing, that's where everything changes. So, cultural dynamics as in any part that we forensic assessment. There, we need somebody who understands the purpose of the assessment. In other words, we need somebody who's not going to feed answers to this accused person. We need somebody who understands what is the objective of the assessment. And when they understand that, they will convey everything verbatim. Even if this accused person is not making sense, it is not their responsibility to try and polish it to come out nicely. No, because they are defeating the purpose of the assessment. So there's two types of assessment that we're talking about. But when we talk about diagnosis of the third-party claims and your therapy and so forth, that's where the cultural dynamics come in, and interpreters and translators come in to bridge the gap.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue. Let's continue this discussion into the lunch break. We're very proud of our doctoral candidates. If you have feedback for them, if you have questions, if you have suggestions, please come to them. They will be very happy, right? Thank you very much. A round of applause to them again.
A round of applause to Prof. Lil and the panel. I could listen to this the whole day. Such an interesting debate or conversation. I come bearing some good news. We break for lunch for 30 minutes. Then we come back and have one more panel discussion, and then way forward and closing. Thank you.
How long? How long is the lunch break?
30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay. Thank you very much. So see you all back here in 30 minutes.